Now, what is physiologically happening once you start working out? And we know when we start working out, we increase our heart rate, obviously, and our muscles need more blood because our muscles are contracting faster. But what physiologically happens to heart rate, stroke volume, cardiac output, VO2, systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure, pulse pressure, mean arterial pressure, rate pressure product? So we're going to go through all of that. So first, we'll just explain the very concept, what the whole cardiovascular system is, and again, heart I drill. So we're just gonna go over what the whole cardiovascular system is and what is the heart's job. The heart has two real main jobs. Obviously, one is to beat and keep you alive, but its first job is to supply blood to your muscles. That's a pretty common job. Everyone knows that, obviously, supply blood to your muscles. And when you start exercising, what do your muscles need? They need more blood because they're contracting much faster. They need a much greater amount of energy and oxygen and nutrients and get rid of all the waste products. So muscles need more blood when you exercise. And the heart accomplishes that by, when you start exercising, by increasing your heart rate, increasing your stroke volume, increasing your cardiac output. So it accomplishes that. Now, its other goal is to control blood pressure. Because when you start exercising, okay, so you have this normal person, normal dude, and let's say he has no legs, but you have this normal guy, and this is more exercise physiology, going over the blood flow and the blood ratio, what ratio is going to the muscles, what ratio of blood is going to the less active organs. Now, when you're at rest, we're just going to take some time to go over this because everything else makes much more sense when you understand what the role of the heart is and what jobs it's tasked with doing. Now, when you're at rest, you only have like 20% of your blood going to your muscles because your muscles aren't that active at rest. They just don't need all that blood. And you have like 80% of your blood going to your less active organs, such as your liver, your GI tract, your small intestine. Your brain's not really a less active organ, but things going, all this blood, your kidneys, all this blood going to your less active organs, which they still have a very important job. Now, when you start exercising, this ratio shifts drastically. All the blood going to your muscle, all this blood now has to go to your muscles because now your muscles need around like 80% blood when you're exercising. And you can think about that, obviously, because when you start exercising, it has a much greater demand, it needs much more blood. It needs a lot more blood. So your body shifts all this blood to your muscles, and all the blood going to your liver, your GI tract, your kidneys, your less active organs really decrease because you really don't need them when you're exercising. That's why when you're exercising, you're really not digesting food or whatever, and you're not really peeing when you're exercising, hopefully, because the less active organs, your heart has more important job to fulfill by supplying blood to your muscles. So it accomplishes that. Now you can imagine, though, supplying this massive amount of blood to your muscles, this will raise your blood pressure drastically. But your heart also compensates that by two things called vasoconstriction and vasodilation, which is just controlling the size of your blood vessels. Now it does all this to control your blood pressure. Now eventually, when exercise reaches a maximal level, and you have so much blood going to your muscles, your body ultimately has to choose: do I want to supply more blood to my muscles, or do I want to control my blood pressure? Is it more important for me to supply blood to my muscles and then pop up artery or blow up an artery and not control my blood pressure, or vice versa? So that is the reason why you ultimately stop exercising. I mean, obviously there's other reasons like lactic acid, muscles aren't strong enough or whatever, but cardiovascular wise, this is what's going on. Your heart has chosen to control blood pressure over supplying blood. So this essentially answers that question of what happens when you start exercising. When you start exercising, a massive amount of blood goes to your muscles. But physiologically, we're looking at what is causing all that blood to go to your muscles. Now, your heart rate, when you start exercising, everyone knows when you start exercising, your heart rate increases. Now, why does your heart rate increase when you start exercising? Because like we just went over, your heart has a greater demand to get blood to all of its muscles. But physiologically, what's going on is, going back to the SA node. Now, the SA node beats by itself, autorhythmic, chilling in the heart, every 60 to 100 beats per minute. And in an elite athlete or a trained athlete, their heart rate's actually lower. It's around 40 to 45 beats per minute because of something called vagal tone. or parasympathetic activity, which we went over. So vagal tone, parasympathetic activity. Now, when you first start exercising, obviously your heart rate gets above 100 beats per minute. But how does your heart rate get above 100 beats per minute? So two things happen. So since the SA node by itself can beat to 100 beats per minute, you don't need epinephrine and everything. The SA node can first take care of going to 100 beats per minute. But what is stopping the SA node from going that high? This guy. This guy is lowering it, so this guy first has to, the vagal tone input has to decrease in first. So the parasympathetic activity decreases in the heart, and that will slowly raise the heart rate to 100 beats per minute because of the SA node. So first, this guy decreases. He gets very, very small. He decreases. So we get rid of him when we're exercising. So that's the very first thing that happens to a heart rate. Now, once your heart rate gets to 100 beats per minute, it obviously has to get greater than 100 beats per minute. We know our heart rate is much higher than that when we start exercising. So in order to get above 100 beats per minute, the sympathetic nervous system takes over, and that's the fight and flight. Just this is synonymous with epinephrine and norepinephrine. Epinephrine and norepinephrine. Now, epinephrine, it's a little dicey if that's considered a hormone or a neurotransmitter. In this case, the sympathetic nervous system is talking about neurotransmitters, so we'll talk about epinephrine, norepinephrine. Epinephrine is mostly a hormone, but also, well, I won't get into the details about that. But these guys take over. Again, if you say either one of these, you'll be correct. But these guys take over, and these raise heart rate even more. So this is how you raise your heart rate. So first, vagal tone decreases, and then sympathetic increases. Now, something important to note is for transplant patients, when someone gets a heart transplant, okay, so you have this person, okay, the heart's right here. They have all these nerves connecting to the heart. These nerves are the vagal tone. They lower the heart rate. Now, in a transplant patient, you cut out someone's heart, put it in a new person, but they don't have all these nerves because you sever these nerves when you move the heart. It's not like the nerves are all of a sudden going to attach to the heart. That's not how it works. So this heart has no nerves. So in a transplant patient, there was no parasympathetic activity. So since there's no parasympathetic activity, that means their heart rate, a transplant patient's heart rate is probably going to be around 110 beats per minute at rest. Now, in a healthy individual or someone that owns the heart, that's not normal because of the SA node and got parasympathetic activity. But in a transplant patient, since it's not their heart, their brain can't communicate with the heart. So their heart will naturally be beating much faster. Now, what does that mean? That means when they start exercising, instead of going from 60 to 100 to 100 to 200, whatever, it goes from like 110 up. So it increases the heart rate increases much, much faster. So we'll do 3 arrows. It increases much greater. So the clinical way to approach a transplant patient, if you're training them, is a very, very, very long warm-up. And now we'll go over stroke volume. Stroke volume increases also when you start exercising. What that means is we pump out more blood. So yeah, we pump out more blood. We already went over that. When you start exercising, your body pushes more blood to the muscles. One thing it does is increases heart rate, so your heart beats faster, but it also has to increase stroke volume, so you push out more blood with every single beat. Now, it does this through 2 mechanisms, and you have to know these mechanisms because they're asked every time. They're very important mechanisms. One is because of the catecholamines. Catecholamines is just a fancy word for epinephrine and norepinephrine. Epi and norepi. So sympathetic activity. What these guys do is they release calcium. They cause more calcium to be released in the body. And when you release calcium on the heart, calcium increases contractility of the heart. Now going back to, I'm not quite sure what class, either anatomy or exercise physiology, whenever the muscle contracts, those tropomyosin and myosin, and calcium binds to troponin and removes tropomyosin, whatever, very confusing things you don't have to know. But it does all these things, and so pretty much calcium causes muscle contraction. The heart is a muscle, so calcium causes contraction. So if you increase calcium concentration, you increase contractility. So that's the first thing that happens. First, catecholamines release. You release epinephrine, norepinephrine, and what these do is these indirectly they cause calcium to be released, If you release more calcium, you increase contractility of the heart. So that increases stroke volume. Contractility is kind of like a rubber band. It contracts harder. I'm sure everyone knows what contractility is. If you increase contractility of the heart, it contracts more forcibly. Contract more forcibly, you push out more blood. You like propel it out. Now the other thing is called the Frank-Starling Mechanism. Now I have a whole nother video, like a 10-minute video going over what the Frank-Starling Mechanism is, and I'll attach it on this. Now the Frank-Starling Mechanism simply means that the heart is, okay, gotta do a picture. Okay, here's the left ventricle. It pumps out a certain amount of blood with every single beat. Since the heart's a closed loop, the Frank-Starling Mechanism just means that more blood is entering the left ventricle. So the left ventricle is filling up with more blood more rapidly. That's called end-diastolic volume. End-diastolic volume just means it's the chamber or the left ventricle is filling up with more blood. So when the chamber fills up, it stretches. And the example I use in the other video is a rubber band. It stretches like a rubber band. And when the left ventricle stretches, it contracts much more forcibly, and the force is much greater. So that's all Frank-Starling Mechanism is saying. You increase end-diastolic volume by having more, what that means, more blood is flowing into the heart or the left ventricle. More blood flows into the left ventricle, you pump out more blood because you increase the stretch of the heart. So this kind of goes around with stretch. Increase the stretch of the walls of the ventricles. You stretch something. Think of the heart as a rubber band. You stretch it, it's going to forcibly contract and hurt and be very, very strong. And now the thing that increases Frank-Starling Mechanism mostly is venous return. Venous return, again I have another video going over that, is just more blood is returning to the heart. So if more blood is returning, you got more blood to pump out since it's a closed loop. And that's how you increase stroke volume. Now there's other things. There's something called the Trappe Effect, but that's not too important. The Trappe Effect is just another effect of calcium. Trappe Effect is just it's kind of hard to explain. It's like an indirect effect of you increase heart rate, so you increase contractility, but it's not too important. It's mostly end-diastolic volume / venous return. Venous return is mostly increasing stroke volume. Now, since you know heart rate is increasing when you start exercising, and you know stroke volume is increasing, it's very easy to tell what happens to cardiac output, VO2, rate pressure product, and also, I'm sure you all know systolic blood pressure increases when you start exercising. If you pump out more blood with every single beat, you're going to increase the pressure. We went over that. Blood pressure is just blood going through a little tube. Pump out more blood, you're going to have more pressure going on the walls. So systolic blood pressure will increase. Now, diastolic blood pressure is interesting. This actually stays the same. Diastolic blood pressure is the pressure when the heart is resting. Now, when the heart's resting, its pressure is very low. Even when you exercise and your heart is still resting, so your pressure should not be increased when your heart is resting. So diastolic blood pressure should not increase. If it increases when you're exercising, that's not good. That's one of the major risks of stop exercise and have that patient see a physician. So with all these things, you can easily see what happens with all the other values. Now, what we'll do is we'll just break them all down. It's very simple. If you just break it down to the formula, you can see what happens to everything. So first, we'll see what happens to cardiac output. Cardiac output equals heart rate times stroke volume. Well, heart rate is increasing, stroke volume is increasing, so cardiac output has to increase by proportions, and cardiac output increases. And you're looking at VO2. VO2 equals cardiac output times AV difference. Forget what AV difference is. That definition is not too important in this class. If cardiac output is increasing, VO2 has to increase. Then you're looking at rate pressure product. Remember, rate pressure product is stress on the heart, so you can think about this two ways. The heart's working harder when you're exercising, so rate pressure product is probably increasing, or you can just break it down to a formula. Heart rate times systolic blood pressure divided by 100. Well, heart rate's increasing, systolic blood pressure is increasing, so rate pressure product is probably increasing. Pulse pressure is systolic minus diastolic. Remember, rate pressure product does not have units. So in a case study, when you calculate rate pressure product, do not put units on this number. It's just a number. Since it's systolic minus diastolic, systolic is increasing, so that's probably increasing, and it is. And the same thing for mean arterial pressure. Since they're exercising, it'll probably be 1/2 systolic minus diastolic plus diastolic. Plus diastolic. Well, this is increasing, this is staying the same, this is staying the same. So mean arterial pressure is increasing. So now instead of being a whole clusterfuck of green writing, we'll just put it in a beautiful graph. So we'll just draw this little graph. So what happens to heart rate, to stroke volume, to cardiac output, to VO2, to rate pressure product, systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure, mean arterial pressure, holy shit, there's a lot of terms, pulse pressure. Okay, so what happens to all these things when you start exercising? Well, we know heart rate increases. Remember, because first parasympathetic activity decreases and then sympathetic activity increases. So first PNS decreases and then sympathetic increases. Stroke volume increases via catecholamines or epinephrine, which are synonymous with kind of calcium, so contractility, and also Frank-Starling Mechanism. And that's synonymous with increase in venous return. Increased venous return increases Frank-Starling. Now break it down to the formula. Heart rate times stroke volume. So cardiac output is increasing. If cardiac output is increasing, VO2 is increasing. If heart rate's increasing, rate pressure product is increasing. Systolic blood pressure is increasing because you're pumping out more blood. Pressure will increase. Diastolic is the only one that remains the same. Rate pressure product increases because of the formula. Systolic is increasing, so mean arterial pressure is increasing. Pulse pressure is increasing because systolic is increasing. So all these things pretty much all of this is saying that when you start exercising, everything increases minus diastolic, but you have to know the mechanisms of how these things increase. Definitely this mechanism and this mechanism. They're the most important ones. And know what happens with a transplant patient. You cut out a heart cut out a heart, so you severed all the nerves, put it in a new body. The nerves automatically do not fuse with that new heart, so that's not how it works. So thus that heart is forever, has no parasympathetic activity. So you always have a higher heart rate. If you don't own your heart, you have a high heart rate. So this all happens when you start exercising.